What's up, Chris here again, and today we are going to be taking a look at how to disassemble the Bolt Carrier Group in the WE Apache MP5 series. First thing you want to do is remove your magazine, put that to the side, pop out the rear pin of whatever MP5 configuration you're running, take the stock off. It's going to come out like this on my collapsible version. Next, we're going to remove the recoil spring guide rod assembly, and this is an alternative step. That's actually for the position the selector lever has to be if you want to remove that, but we're not going to do that, so we'll put that back. Next, just open the two halves up a little bit and push the bolt to the rear, and it's going to come out like this. So you can, to make this easier, you could have cocked the rifle beforehand. Put the receiver assembly aside, and what we're left with is the WE Apache MP5 Bolt Carrier Group. So a couple of reasons why you would want to go disassembling this is if you're possibly installing a upgraded floating valve, or you have a broken nozzle you need to replace, or in my case I have a FG Airsoft FPS limiter disc in here that I'm pretty sure I've installed in the wrong orientation, so I want to get that out and fix that. Before we move on, I'm just gonna wipe off some silicone oil. It makes it a little bit easier to work on. And you can see on either side here, these are nozzle alignment blocks, which keeps the nozzle in place and also make sure that it's aligned. So we need to remove these two screws. Okay, so with the screws removed, what we need to do now is get these alignment blocks out, and they can be a bit of a pain. Let's see if I can go in with the pin. It's too fat. Switch out to a flat head and try to get in here. And it comes up like so. So these are plastics. You need to be a little bit careful of how you remove them. And that's the second one. So we'll see here. Once those are removed, the nozzle, I mean, it's not rotating terribly much, but yeah, significantly. So those are important to keep it aligned. And you'll notice we still can't get the nozzle out, and that's because there's a pin here in the back that's keeping the spring and nozzle in place. So we need to punch out the pin, and it goes from right side to the left side. You see it's flat and flush here, and it's a little bit rounded on this side. So we'll take a punch, and we'll take my roll of tape, get that seated on there. And the pin comes out. And now we should be able to slide the nozzle out. And what we have in the back is the piston head section and the piston head O-ring, the nozzle spring, and the nozzle itself. And the spring is now attached in here by this tiny pin. And you can see on one end it's completely, again, flat and flush. And on the other side it's a little bit rounded and what's it called, indented in the material. So to get this out, you're going to need a significantly smaller pin than this. Let's see what I have here in my toolbox. Nothing appropriate in that one. In this kit, I have a 0.7 hex key that is suitable for this. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Now, I've already had this apart, so it's probably a little bit loosened up, but this should come out with just hand force. You don't want to hammer too much. So you can see we got it started coming out. Grab a pair of pliers and just pull it all the way out like that. And now the spring will come out and you'll be able to separate the two halves like this. And this has pretty obvious alignment for how it's supposed to go back together, so you don't have to worry about that. And what popped out here is the rocket valve or floating valve and the rocket valve spring. And I can see that my disc, yeah, oh man. This is what the FG Airsoft limiter disc looks like. So that is the disassembly of the WE Apache MP5 nozzle. Now let's see, I do believe that the ridged side, no way. Like I was saying, the ridged side is supposed to go back towards the rear of the gun. So to install this properly, let's put it on a pin, or sorry, punch. Drop it in. Okay, so I managed to get it in there the right way. Next we're going to put the spring back in on top. And finally, the floating valve after that in this orientation. Just like to make sure that it's nice and springy. And we're going to go ahead and put the two halves of the nozzle back together. And you can see there's a very noticeable joint where it lines up. So next up is the tricky part, which is that we have to get the spring back in and hook it onto this little pin that we took out. So I'm going to put the pin, get the pin started. And then we're going to use a punch to hang the spring from. Drop it in. So you need to align so that the hook on the spring will align with the way that the pin is coming in. All the way back. And probably don't want to do that with my thumb. Oh, I had it. That's too bad. Let's see if we can cheat the system here. Nope. So this is a little bit tricky, but the way that you can check how it's supposed to line is you hook it out on the outside of the nozzle. You can see that this loop just sticks out at the end, and that's when you know you're in the right position. So that's why it's good to use the punch. That way you know that's exactly the position you want to be in. So let's try that again. And I got it this time. Just go ahead and push that little pin back into place. Make sure it's nice and flush so it doesn't interfere with anything. Could probably push that in just a tiny bit more. Okay, so the second challenge here is then that we need to hook this loop of the spring with the pin from the Bolt Carrier Group. So we're going to insert the nozzle all the way back. We're going to get the pin started. And basically this should self-align, so to speak, but I missed right there, so we're going to go back. So basically, as you can see, the loop of the spring is exactly in the position it needs to be when it's all the way back, so we just need to get the pin in there. And I got it. So again, that's a little bit fiddly, but you should be able to get it in a couple of tries. Push the pin all the way back in so it's nice and flush. And now we're ready to reinstall the nozzle alignment blocks. So that's one. And that's two. And then all you gotta do is replace the screws on here. Alright, so the Bolt Carrier Group is now all the way back together. Make sure your nozzle sliding out nice and freely, which it does. Springs back, everything is correctly in place, and we're now ready to put it back into the MP5. So to get it back into the MP5, make sure the cocking handle is all the way forward to make the bolt go in easier. Pop the two halves open. I would suggest that you cock the hammer. Slide the Bolt Carrier Group in. Let's see. Pop it in. Put the recoil spring guide rod in. Make sure it goes all the way in through the bolt carrier. And here's the tricky part. To be able to close the two halves now, you have to back the bolt out a little bit. And then you can let it slide forward. And now we're ready to put the stock back on. Make sure everything aligns, push it in, and put the pin back in place. Let's see, there we go. So there you go, that's the MP5 back to completeness. And that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.